Hey guys, we're back talking about Tokarev 7.62 by 25 and how to make cheap brass from 223 brass. And you don't need a lathe. I use a lathe simply because I like it and it's easier. With that said, let's get started. Step one complete. Pretty close. I think we've got it. Bottom one does not, top one does. Just enough to start the bullet. I know when I started this fire drill, I was definitely having troubles going into battery. And why did I have that? Well, because I listened to some people online, and one of those things I listened to said was, oh, you really don't need to ream these cases. So I just kind of said, oh, let me try some. And of course, none of those went in the battery. And, when you stop and think about it, of course it makes sense, right? So given this, that in my case, I shot for a max wall thickness of 12 thousandths. So that's a total of 24 thousandths. Depending on your reference, you'll have neck ODs listed for the cartridge at 333 to 335. So if you subtract that 24 thousandths, you end up having room for a 309 to 311 projectile. Now that just means at those max numbers. It doesn't mean you're totally limited to that. You can run a little bit bigger projectile if your wall thickness was thinner, or if you had bigger chamber in your gun, yada yada yada. But in my case, I was trying to stick to keeping that number under 335. And once I went down to 12 thousandths wall, 10, 12 thousandths was my range. I used 308 projectiles. I ran as much as 310 with no issues. Those problems went away. So it's just one of those things. You just can't take what I'm saying or anybody else is saying as kind of the absolute truth. You got to kind of use your noodle a little bit and sit down and figure things out. One of the other things that I kind of read a lot about, some controversy or conflicting opinions or answers, or whatever you want to call it, was where does the 7.62 by 25 headspace? And I've read both answers on that. I've read the case mouth. That's the most common, I think. But also I've read that it's the shoulder, the bottleneck cartridge. It headspaces off the shoulder. And I've used, I use lead. This is a 3115 RCBS mold that I cut down. These throw about 92 or 3 or so to 96. And what did I do? I lost it. Oh, of course I can't reach. And I run these. These are the RCBS 3277s. I run those about 82 grains. And I use that top lube groove as a crimp groove. But I use both those. I have roll crimp those. I've taper crimped those, just experimenting. It's like, oh my God, don't roll crimp, because it had spaces off the case mouth. And I would say, I think that's not true nor false. I think it probably depends on your particular firearm. In my case, I used the CZ52, and here's just some random numbers, some random fired cases and some random loaded cases. And you can see, and those numbers are off of my comparator, so they're not going to, translate to anybody else's numbers or anything. But that's just a comparative number for me. And you can see there's only a few thousands difference. So I would venture to say it's fine to headspace off the shoulder on my particular gun. So I don't have any issues roll crimping. But again, this is stuff you need to figure out. These questions, I think, are why people say this is such a difficult case to reload. But to be honest with you, it's not difficult at all. You could see the steps are very, very easy. You just got to spend a minute to think about what some of your numbers are. That's it, guys. It's a fun little round. They're pretty zippy. I can't encourage you enough to go ahead and cast your own, roll your own, and have some fun with them, guys. Until later. See ya.